Hi, everybody. My name is Dwana Smallwood, and I am here with the none other than the incomparable Judith Jamison, dancer, choreographer, writer extraordinaire. Oh my God. And most importantly, my mentor. Hi, Judy.
Dwana, how you doing?
I'm fine, and I'm super excited. It's ridiculous.
Look at you and your brick wall. I know about that brick wall. You told me about that brick wall.
You know, I did this brick wall myself.
I know that brick wall. Remember we were showing each other the apartments. I was showing you the paintings, and you were walking me around yours and all the stuff you're doing in this interim.
Yes, you've been involved in my life in so many ways, for so many years. Do you remember how we met?
No.
You don't? Okay. Oh my God, I forgot to
refresh my memory.
I have this
It'll come back.
I have this journal with your face all over it. And I was sitting at the Ailey building volunteering as a student. And you walked
Which
up
building?
On 211 West 61st.
Oh, 61st Street, okay.
And on this journal was your face, Lenny, Danny G, and you walked up and you were like, whose is this? And I was like, mine. And you were like, why is my face all over this journal? And I was like, what do you mean, why? Because you're Judith Jamison, that's why. And you were just like, oh my God, oh my God.
I bet. I don't remember that. What was our next big meeting though?
Our next big meeting was actually when I was in the second company, and I was chosen with Jason to go to Europe to tour on behalf of the Ailey company. My life changed, and but I want to rewind a whole lot. Let's start from, you are young and you're a dancer back in a time when dancers who look like you, beautiful and statuesque, are capable of doing everything. You tell your parents, I want to be a dancer. How does that go?
No, I didn't tell my parents, my parents I wanted to be a dancer. You know, my life has been guided because, you know, I grew up in the Black church, Mother Bethel AME church. So my life has been guided. That's all I can say, because there's no way in the world I could have gotten this far without being guided. You know what I was saying? No way. Everything, it's not serendipity and it's not all that. I am guided to this day. I believe that. So it wasn't a matter of me telling my parents, like, I want to dance. I didn't know I wanted to dance until I got to Fisk University, and we'll go back to that. But I ended up taking ballet classes, you know, when I was 6, right? They put me in ballet school because I was awkward. I didn't know that at that time because nobody tells you that kind of stuff. They don't need to tell you that kind of stuff. I was awkward, long, skinny legs, long arms, you know. And they, you know, I was wearing corrective shoes. And my mother and my father decided that I needed to, let's go to Marion Sue Jay's Junmar School of Dance. I studied there until I was, in my teens. I mean, the last performances I did from 6 to 17.
And
I studied. No, are you kidding? She was my ballet teacher, but you know, teachers back then in the 40s and the 50s, and to this day, I bet, because you have to have the full package. My teacher was smart enough that way, Marion Suchet, Dolores Brown. I learned Dunham. I learned jazz. I learned, and when I say jazz, I say that very loosely because everybody throws jazz around like, you know what I'm saying. So, and not really a modern technique because, you know, I don't remember doing, you know, contractions on the floor. Best contraction I was doing was Dunham technique, you know, the Yambaloo and all that, right? Tap, I learned, yes, exactly. Tap I learned, and thank God I did, because I ended up on Broadway with one of the greatest tap dancers in the world, the late, great Gregory Hines. So thank God I had those classes. And I was studying, think about, you know how everybody calls it West African dance, and then everything, the continent gets all blurred. And so by the time I was like 10 or 11, 12, something like that, we would have 6, 7 drummers in the studio. It wasn't all that big. there were adults in the class, there were kids in the class, there were, you know, big, little. There was this big woman named Elizabeth, big black woman. She was about 6'1", giant size. I mean, she was big, you know, and I'm going like, oh goodness, you know, you don't stop and think, but you're going like, can she? She could. She could move. Like, she was amazing in the class.
Wow.
And there were no endings to the class really until everybody got so tired and that was it. You know what I'm saying? So class would
over, we're all dead.
Yes, just go on and on until you're not loving it anymore, you know? And you would leave, you know, like a foot above the ground, you know, when you would go home, it would still be in your mind and in your body and in your spirit, and everything, you know. So I remember those classes the most. I remember my ballet classes because of the discipline, because Marion Suchet would scare all of us. She had a stick. She didn't hit us with the stick, but she walked around the room. If you didn't have that passe where it was supposed to be after she told you, and she only had to tell you once, and this is at 6, you know, you better know where a passe was supposed to be. I learned my French, vocabulary. She was a stickler. She really was.
Oh.
She would send us home with recordings of music that we had to dance to, that the pianist that used to play for class made these recordings on these great big thick 33 and a third record.
Wow.
Yes, parents made the costume.
That's where you get your work ethic from.
Oh, absolutely. And to also try to learn everything there is. And I keep thinking of you too, because that's what you're doing with your kids. They're learning everything, you know? Yeah. So that's what's so important, that you know, I didn't know it at the time, but that you embrace everything there is about the theater. Mm-hmm. You're dancing, you better be the bomb. You know, you better, it's no such thing as coming to class and half doing it. There's no such thing as half doing anything. You couldn't get away with it, and you were wasting everybody's time, including your own, if you did. So there was never a question, you know, so that was instilled in me. But that whole idea that I'm gonna dance for the rest of my life and make a career didn't dawn on me. I was having a good old time. I was having a good time, and I was good. I was studying with Anthony Tudor when I was like 10 years old, and he would come to just outside of Philadelphia and teach all these other people, other than Black people. So there were only a couple of Black people in his class, but he was one of the few, Anthony Tudor, that had people of color and Black people in his classes. You know, nobody's, you know, there were people that were trying, you know, they were trying. And famous people that were trying. You have to claim, you know, that you are this talented person, and, you know, that you can do things that are very special. That never came out in me. It never came out. I don't remember that. I remember thinking I better be the best ever that ever got on the stage, you know, and when I wouldn't be the best that ever got on the stage, to myself, not comparing myself to everybody else. We were so different. It was like night and day. So I'm in my teens, late teens. I'm at Fisk University, 3 years after John Lewis. You with me? Because when we would see each other in Washington or wherever he would be, he would immediately acknowledge that we were at Fisk, that we went to Fisk.
I just didn't even connect the two. Wow.
Yeah. So, but he was 3 years ahead of me, and so brave. Oh my goodness. I transferred because it wasn't for me to be there. You know, it just was not for me.
Yeah.
I transferred to the Philadelphia Dance Academy, which is now the University of the Arts. It wasn't that back then. It was called the Philadelphia Dance Academy, where you could get a degree. So I continued there for about 2 more years. And somewhere in there, I went like, it wasn't that I wanted to be a dancer, but I saw Alvin Ailey for the first time in my life when I was a student there. So in 1963, I saw Mr. Ailey dance. I saw Minnie Marshall. She did Fix Me Jesus with him. I saw James Truitt. She did Fix Me Jesus with Minnie Marshall. I saw Thelma Hill carrying the umbrella in Wading in the Water. You don't tell people about these people, right? And I saw Mr. Ailey do Wading in the Water. I was
wow, like, were you thinking like, this is where I have to be?
No, absolutely not.
Really?
Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, I looked at it, I appreciated it. There wasn't a great revelation for me until later when I realized, do you realize what you just saw? You know, but what happened is we went, you know how you have improvisation classes?
Yes.
In school, and so we had the improvisation part of our curriculum. Nobody did anything original. Everything came from Revelations. I mean, we were all, and they did Blue Suite that night too.
Ooh.
Oh, it was just, and so Brother John Sellers was there. You know, these people it was live, you know, it was just live. It was so fresh. And then I'm always late on the draw anyway. I get it afterwards. It's going to take me a beat or two, but when I get it, I get it. But everybody I mean, we were all totally impressed, you know, by it. And then I forgot about it. And then Agnes DeMille came and taught this class at the end of a very arduous day of taking classes all day. And I had to be convinced to take the class. And then when I did, at the end of the class, she invited me to come to New York and be a guest artist with American Ballet Theaters with the Four Marys, starring Carmen de Lavallette. So, but I went like, she said, would you like to come? And I just said yes. And no, didn't go, oh my God, isn't this amazing? And the first thing I remember about being here is just the buildings. I said, oh God, this place is big, it's all tall. And I thought everybody rehearsed in studios at State Theater because that's the first place I rehearsed.
What?
You know, so then when that gig was over, because they didn't need any Black people in American Ballet Theater, we were guests, you know, to do this ballet, The Four Marys. So when that gig was over, and I took my I took my first plane ride on tour with American Ballet Theater just to one place, Chicago. The first time I had ever been on an airplane. The first time, right? So it was charter flight. It was all ballet theater, and flew there and had wonderful teachers at Ballet Theater who paid a lot of attention to me and met a whole series of people that I'd only read about in books that were on stage dancing every night. Johnny Creetza and Lupe Serrano, and I can't even list the names of the ballet theater stars at that time. I mean, it was amazing. And I was upstairs with the quarter ballet in a huge room. I had no problems with anybody. And if I did, I ignored it because I don't remember having any problems. You know? Maybe I look very intimidating too. Like, don't give me any problems.
Yeah.
If you see my innocent little pictures from those rehearsals, though, I didn't look intimidating to me. But in any event, Carmen and Jeffrey took me under their wing. I stayed at their apartment. So gracious to me. And I believe they're the ones that instigated the word spread around New York. There's this tall Black, you know, dancer. She don't know nothing yet, but you know, she's good, you know, whatever. I think that Carmen and Jeffrey did that and dropped a dime in Alan's ear. And you know as well, I went to an audition for Harry Belafonte's Roaring 20 special. And I ended up meeting all these people and knowing all these people. I can say I know Harry Belafonte, you know, I mean, this is nuts, right? Right. So it was at that audition.
Out over here, just so you know, my brain is like exploding.
Right. But Paula Kelly, one of the most phenomenal dancers I'd ever seen. And I was used to glissade, assemblée, pas de bourrée, passe, blah, all that terminology. And when she started demonstrating, first of all, it was like, whoa, you know, and then it was, and 1, 2, 3, step, oh, up, and 8, and 1, up, 2, and I'm going like, freaking out, don't know what I'm doing. Plus I showed up in my crochet green leg warmers. They were green, green. Crocheted green leg warmers.
You crocheted?
Yeah, been crocheting
You
forever.
crochet? So do I.
I used to. I don't do it now, but I used to. I remember you crocheting on the bus, on the plane, on every place, right? Right?
Yes.
It was my failure at that audition because I didn't get anything, but I did show up looking very pristine. Everybody was wearing stilettos, wigs, lashes, the whole, because that was what you were supposed to be wearing for that audition. And I showed up in pink ballet shoes and my green leg warmers and my tights and a leotard and everything. I didn't know what, you know. And I ended up leaving, passing that man that was sitting on the steps, who I didn't see him. And in passing this man, I just went out, you know, my legs feeling like, ooh, like this, because I had never had an audition before.
Right.
So the only audition I ever had was that, this one that I failed, right? Ran out the studio, passed the man on the steps, went across the street to a payphone. You pick it up, you put coins in it, and I ended up calling my mom, and that was the revelation with me saying, you know, Mom, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I have to stay here. That was it. And I was boo-booing it. I don't know, but I have to. And she, you know, she said, okay, you know, and I ended up 2 days later, the man that I passed on the step called me and asked me would I like to join his company. So you see what I mean? How this is a guided life?
That is so guided.
I'm not looking for it. You know, I wasn't looking for it.
Yeah.
My father was a sheet metal mechanic. He was a carpenter and a pianist, and he could sing opera. You know, I mean, come on. You know what I mean?
Wow.
I know. And my mom was queen.
Oh, yes.
No crown on the head, but the head was held as if there was a crown on the head, right? So you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Bless. But the point being is that revelation came that I had to, that I've been doing this all my life, and I guess I want to do this. You know.
How was that being in the Ailey company? You're now there, you're traveling, you're one of the dancers, you're now Umbrella Girl.
I was Fix Me Jesus girl when I joined the company.
Yes, you were when you first got in the company.
Jesus.
Fix Me Jesus.
Right, and with the original member of the Album Ailey American Dance, Jimmy Truitt was my partner. Yes. I had seen Minnie Marshall do it with Jimmy Truitt, but he was my partner. The first rehearsal that I ever went to, I walked in and tried to do that. Oh my goodness, look, I'm here. I tried to do that excitement thing, because I was excited. There was no time for that. I had to learn my 6 ballets, my 8 ballets in 2 weeks. So, right?
In 2 weeks?
2 weeks, sometimes 3 weeks. So you just had to learn a whole lot of stuff. I remember Congo Tango Palace. I remember Blue Suite, Revelations, Reflections in D, anything by Talent. It was a lot because the repertoire was small. So it was a lot of pieces you had to learn because you had to get on a bus.
And you danced
and get out there.
In every piece. Were there like casting changes?
No, because there were only 10 people in the company. So there was no casting change. Especially, you know, I mean, you'd have to be dead not to go on stage, number one. You know, something have to be, you know, you come limited with you know, your leg is back there or something, then you have to be in the hospital, then there's a casting change. But there was no space there for casting anything. You went on stage, period. And the thought was constantly, after walking into this sea of extraordinary dancers, because the dancers that were leaving were teaching. So that's when I met Hope Clark.
Yes.
Who was the last person that did Blue Suite with Alvin, right? So she was teaching someone else, you know, Backwater Blues. And Bill Luther, nobody's ever heard of Bill Luther, and he was just extraordinary. Something was going on in every part of the one floor that we had. There were
Wow.
not two studios. It was one studio and everybody was learning. And Dudley stopped me in my tracks when I asked at one point during a rehearsal, well, what is the step? Because, you know, we like variations on a theme in ALA. Yes, okay. So, I mean, that's what makes this company interesting. When it comes to coming together, we all have these different notes, but we look like a company dancing together.
Yes.
You know, we all have the same incentive. They had no time for that. Just learn what it is, girl, and get out on stage and do what you think it is. You know what I mean?
Yes, indeed.
But do it feverishly. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Do it with all your heart. You know.
Oh wow! So
It was exciting.
Yeah, that sounds super exciting. You're building a legacy, the foundation for what is now, which is like generations of dancers and history. You are the root of that, which is just, oh my goodness.
The ones that came before me are the root.
Yeah.
The people that started it are the root.
Yeah.
And I'm just part of, you know, what came
a
a little bit more and a little bit more. But we all had the same thought, to make sure the company stayed on the map, make sure people understood what this vision was. We didn't call it vision back then.
Why were you so invested in it? Like what?
Because number one, we loved him because his choreography was brilliant, and because the people who he brought in, the choreographers who he brought in, were people we were fascinated by, and we were showing off. I mean, we're performers. Can you do this? Yes, I can do that. You know, so he tried to give us as much variety as possible. But really, I mean, if you think, we were working with Anna Sokolow doing rooms, and he was making choices like that way before people were making choices in modern dance repertoire, because he invented modern dance repertoire. Everybody else was doing their own single song. You know what I mean?
Yes, yes.
But it was terribly important as a Black person to stand up and say, here I am. Now what you gonna do about it? Applaud? Yes, please.
Yes.
You know, be so proud of the fact that he gave you the opportunity to get on stage and be a performer, be an educator, and be, an entertainer, and yes, uplift the people you're with, and yes, bring them to some reality in their life. So when they leave the theater, they're sad or they're happy or they're whatever, but they've been through an experience that they will never forget.
The energy and the power and the stories and the grace that Alvin Ailey possessed, it still stands the test of time now, because dancers like me who come in want to embody that and feel like they have an obligation to carry that torch as well and pass
forward
it to the next person. It is just so powerful a connection to have been in the company and feel like it is your responsibility now to take this torch and pass it on, hold it up high, and respect it and pass it to the next people. So now I want to fast forward to an amazing time in the company for you, where Alvin was, what I think is amazing time for you, where Alvin choreographed Cry, and he comes to you and he says what, and we're gonna do what?
It was on the schedule. It's like, the schedule's only like this little, it's
Did
little
you know
tiny
what the piece
schedule.
was about before he started choreographing?
This was a solo, but I didn't grasp it that way because Alvin had created so many solos for us that were inside of, like Mascala and stuff like that were inside of other ballets. So we were like, I was like, yeah, okay. And plus Connie was called too. Everybody forgets that there were two of us called for the rehearsal. It did not have a title. I don't remember seeing Cry on the board or anything. And when I say board, I'm talking about a piece of paper. Okay. We're not talking about no board with all the exaggerations, but
not the child, not the green pen and the
right. None of that. That grew and grew and grew, which was great because everybody knew what they were doing. All I had to do was run downstairs and go, oh yeah, I'm number one, or I'm whatever. Yeah. But okay, so the first day of rehearsal, I don't remember first days, except he did put on Right On Be Free, and that was the first thing that we learned was the third section. And it it took him about, I'd say, I keep fluctuating on the days, but it happened so fast. It was like, you know, you rehearsed 5 days a week, so it took him about 8 days. So it was like 5 of that week. And then the hardest week was the second week, which would have been 10 days, but it was less than that because something else had to be done. And then probably after that, we revisited it, you know, after you finish learning all the other stuff you have to learn, right? So that first day, I mean, Right On Be Free is the easiest one to learn, except you gotta use that back, you know, and you gotta pull out your Dunham, you know. If you don't pull out your Dunham, it doesn't work.
You gotta use that back.
You know? Yeah, and know how to work the skirt. Hello, you already knew how to work the skirt. Thank you. You were one of the fabulous last ones. Come on now. So, right, that's okay too. I should have put your picture right here behind me. You know I have that picture. Yeah,
I should have put your picture right here too.
That first couple of days, Connie and Consuelo Atlas, who was the late Consuelo Atlas, who's a member of the company, and I learned Right On Be Free. And did we have the skirt? I don't even know if we had the skirt, you know, so we could even practice that. And then the next section was the middle section, Lauren Nero. Oh, it's a gorgeous piece of music. And what she was saying, right, what she was talking about. She actually got in contact with me maybe 10, 12 years ago, 15 years ago, or something like that. But I never really met her, you know, so. But that been on a train, if you've set yourself up, and you know this in the first section, then been on a train hits you in the gut, right? Because you've been on that train in the first section, you know. And the first section was the hardest because he couldn't find Alex Coltrane's music. He didn't know what he was looking for. Or he didn't share that kind of stuff with us, but he could not find that music till the last minute. And for me, that's the most difficult section because that sets up the rest of the ballet. That sets up the rest of the sections. And when it wasn't so much him, he would demonstrate. Alvin always demonstrated stuff. Then he had the cloth and he would lay it down and we put it down. But if we put it down, then he'd say, can you put it down like it's a baby? You know? Or one of my favorite things that I say to dancers that he actually didn't say to us because we understood what it was anyway, is when you're walking, you're not walking on cement. You're walking on the earth. When you first start out it's the earth. Your feet are in contact with nature, you know, and not with cement. Yeah, but he didn't have to say that. There's some things that you already understood, you know what I'm saying? You already understood what it was. So, but it was still the most difficult to choreograph. And you're working with a prop, you know how hard that is. To work with a prop and get it to wrap.
Prop is long.
And not ironed and folded in a way that you open it, it's safe and you can wrap it so that it's safe around your head. And it's the turban that we make in the dance. It's, you know, and if you look at the original version, which I think they aired on All Access Alien, what it is, you'll see what it's developed into and how. That's what I love about each generation of dancers, because you take it other places it's never been, you know. But thank God they have a recording of what the core of it is, you know. It's the same steps, but what the core of it is, you know. It's not with high legs, and it's not with it wasn't until later I started jumping higher and doing stuff like that, but it was just really it's the root of what gave us to do. And I remember when you did it the first time, not the whole thing, but you did the one section, the last section, that exhausted you. And when we were in rehearsal, in what country were we in? It was in a little studio. There were steps you could go down to where you were learning it, and
Yes.
you would just fall out. You know, like, okay, I understand what
Wait,
you're talking
do you
about.
remember
Because
that? Where were we? I can't remember where we were in Germany. Somewhere I
yeah,
cannot.
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Go ahead.
You called us to the theater, and it was the first time we ran all 3 sections. And I remember getting to the last section and you getting out of your chair and coming to me, walking alongside of me, like whispering and yelling in my ear, like, it's not about you, let's go, keep going. Like, it's so encouraging and spiritual. And okay, I don't want to cry right now, but it was just like I was embodying everything you had taught me, everything my parents had taught me, my mother's, every historical,
all that history
was right in that moment. And for you to be in my ear, like, let's go, get up, keep going, don't stop. That was remarkable to me, amazing.
good.
What was it like to do it for the first time?
I'm sorry, because you know it, all of us have that revelation, don't we? Until you do it, and then you figure it out, how am I getting through this? To me, the second time I did it was the scariest, because you don't know if you're going to feel the same way you did it the first time, where you couldn't feel anything. In my experience, that first time, we hadn't gone from beginning to end. We had never run it. We had no time to run it on that day because the costume was wrong. They had made a dress for me, and I looked terrible in dresses. So they ran to Capezio's and bought 2 long sleeve white leotards. They cut the front out, and now the backs are all the way down in the back, but my back was just a little bit lower in the back. And they added to the sleeves because I have very long arms. So that's why they needed 2. Because they needed to attach extra inches of sleeve.
Long, beautiful arms you have.
Thank you. And then on top of that, the skirt that I used was the one that I've been using for 4 years to do wading in the water. So what was remarkable about your generation doing it is y'all were wearing them heavy skirts that were brand new, and then some of them had some decoration on them. So I'm going like, what are you doing to these poor women? It was like, I barely got through it. I barely got through it with this tissue paper thin wading in the water skirt that they had to sew me into because the zipper kept coming down. So they had to, so the first time I did, I was sewn into it. It was falling down it kept falling because I ain't got no waistline. So it was falling down below the hip bone. You know, I mean, but who cared? And then I started out, I remember I heard the music puts you right in it right away. There's no time to like, like you hear doom, 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 you hear that boom, right?
Yes.
And it hits you. So here we go. So I got through that section and I lay down on that floor, and that's where I always get y'all, where I always say, stop, take that time, sit up, and don't turn your head right away because you don't hear anything right away. I always try to give that scenario of, otherwise the moment is lost. If you sit up and look and do this huge thing, it's not that. All it is you sit up and have whatever that woman is thinking, meaning you. And then you think you hear something, because lives are lived sometimes thinking you heard something or thinking you saw something, and then there you are on the stage trying to make that statement about reality or illusion, right? All in one little thing, one little movement of sitting up, waiting, thinking you heard something, getting up, just letting this anger that you feel has, you've been carrying burden all through that first section. You've been from a queen to scrubbing floors to whatever, but you're always this queen straight through the whole thing. So it's the things you have to go through as the queen that she did it. You're not supposed to be going through some of this stuff. So all that anger is like built up inside of you, and that's when the explosion happens. But then you have to come off your throne because you're a human being. And that's when you hear dun, you hear, that's your deflation. That's where all the air comes out of you, right? It all comes out of you. And from that limpness comes the first right? So when you're thinking about this and you're doing it, and I was doing steps, but in my head I had my blood memories, right? So, but when you're doing it, the things that you're carrying with you, oh my goodness. And I didn't know it was dedicated to all Black women, especially our mothers. I read that probably the next day in the playbill. I have no idea, he didn't tell me that, thank goodness. And so as you're rolling that head around the first time, that's why it's so subtle what you have to do. I was just doing it, let's put it that way. I was just doing it, send it down, I'm doing it, right? Got to the end of that section, so I waved and I reached and I reached and I reached like I was reaching up into that space where I always think of, when you touch somebody that has passed. Somebody's gone off this plane, right? So they're on another plane, but you think you can still touch them. So that's what that was about, that reaching. That's what it meant to me. And the scream, when you're sitting on the floor in second position and you're reaching out with your mouth open,
yes,
and there's no actual scream there, is from a war, the Biafran War. It was the cover of a Life magazine or Look magazine of a Biafran woman on the ground, on the dirt, in the earth with a baby in between her legs, with war and bullets all going around. And she's sitting there with her arms outstretched that way, with a silent scream, right? All this is not going through my head. What's going through my head is like, how I'm gonna get up and do this thing. I don't feel anything. Yeah. I waved, I collapsed over, and I went like, how? And then you blank that, and then you go for it, right? Then you go for it. What's remarkable to me is that Dudley came down to he was the first one that ever did that, came down to the downstage right wing because he knew something was wrong. He knew, he could see that I was like depleting slowly but surely, and he came from back of the house all the way downstage to that right wing. He didn't have to say anything, Sometimes he didn't say anything. He was there, doing that. I couldn't feel anything. I know I was working the skirt, but I know my feet were doing something. And your training kicks in, and also your ego kicks in. There ain't no way you're gonna stop doing this dance in the middle of the thing.
I don't want to stay by yourself.
Exactly. And when you're finished and digging into that step that came right from a club in Kinshasa while war was going on. We were sitting in a club watching women from the bush that they had brought in to entertain us. And they did these dances and that dig step. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes,
that's from them. That's from Kinshasa, exactly. So you get to digging, and and if you're doing it when I'm artistic, I'm going like more. Yeah. More. Get some more. Don't just collapse when you see that curtain come down. You got to give everything, because look what you've given before. So you have to put that, cookie right on the end of that filling. You can't just leave it there crumpled. So the next thing I knew, it was over, and I fell out like everybody else does, right? Right? You fall out, you go, but guess what?
The curtain got up.
Your performance ego is not gonna let a curtain come up on you with you lying on the floor exhausted. So you get up and you receive, right? And we had no idea. I had, and I don't think Mr. Ailey did either, that the audience would go nuts. Like they went nuts. And I had heard audiences go nuts like that before. So it wasn't unusual. You know, it just wasn't unusual. When we would do, I keep bringing up Masakela, when we would do certain ballets, the audience would go totally nuts for any of the soloists that were out there. And if you weren't a soloist, they were nuts anyway. This was a great ensemble. You know what I'm saying?
Like 8 curtain calls or something when you first did it?
When I first did it?
Yes, when you first did Cry, did you get 8 curtain calls?
I didn't count, but it might have been more than that. I didn't count though, because they paged the curtain. They had to page the curtain, right? So I'm lying on the floor. The applause starts. I'm not like jumping up to get up. I'm taking my time. So they have a little time to applaud. But it's that kind of thing I don't remember. I really don't, unless, you know, child tell me something like, do you realize how long they were? Or even in Revelations, when, and you don't have like automatic encores, right? It's like, if they applaud enough, you do an encore, right? So we had heard this before. Mm-hmm. We had heard audiences go nuts before. I guess it was because I was the soloist and they were doing it for me, right? And the telltale was when they were paging the curtain, Alvin had come from out front. He was backstage right after it was, you know, over. He was standing by me as they were paging, and I heard him say, "Now what do I do?" Wow. You know, he was thinking about the next thing, because this thing had hit so big, and I don't know if anybody was expecting it. You know what I'm saying? It was just like normal. So when he called me at 5 o'clock in the morning, he called me at 5 o'clock in the morning. You know how tired I am? To read the review. Oh, to read the review. Alvin never read me a review, ever. But he read this one to me, and he read it to me, and I went right on back to sleep. It took a visual for me to understand, because people started showing it to me. It's the first time I had ever seen my name above the story, my name in, you know, big block letters above the story. So that was a difference. And then it just all broke loose after that. And then that second time is when you go, oh God, can I do this again? Get into this. Right?
I want to do this. I remember after I did it once, you were like, "You ready to do it again?" And I was like, "I don't know." I don't know.
But it's always the second time, and then slowly you figure it out. And it's not sacrificing anything once you figure it out. It's doing everything you can to make this story real for yourself and for the audience. You know, so you know where to. I hate to say hold back, because it's not holding back. It's everything is still going forward, but you know how to make discrete decisions, you know?
Yes, and choose your energy choices properly and not punch the whole piece, because that's not.
Yeah, because you can't do it.
You
can't do it. No. But then you get somebody like Dwana Wood, who does it, has Memoria made for her. So she does Memoria first, or Blue Suite first, something like that. Blue Suite first, then does Memoria, then does Cry, and then does Revelations. You know, I mean, so as I say, she's the generation after me, right? So she was in my roles after I left. Child, I'm going like, she what? She what? And it's the same.
I remember doing generation. And Slaves and Revelation. I remember with you standing in the wing, and if you wasn't in the wing, I wouldn't have known what death or life was. So I needed to see you, so I knew that, okay, I am still alive. You were standing in the wing. I was like, Lord, please save me.
But this is amazing to me. That's how much strength each generation had, more and more and more and more strength to do this piece. I sit there with my mouth hanging open when I was artistic director, going like, how are they doing this? You know? And each generation was stronger, which is what we're about anyway.
Did you know that my direction and my coming to Ailey was not because of Alvin Ailey, it was because of you? like you personally. Did you know
Really?
that? Yes,
No.
I remember doing a solo at the African Street Festival, and I wore this white leotard and a white skirt. And I did a solo, and I won this competition to compete on the Apollo. And everybody would say, "Oh my God, you remind me of a young Judith Jamison." So lanky and I was like, "Who's Judith Jamison?" I think I was like 10. And I go to the library, Lincoln Center Library, and I watch Cry. And I looked at you, and I was just like, wherever she is where I want to be. And from that moment on, I made my whole career my whole life focus on, I want to be near her, I want to be around her, I want to be taught by her, I want to be.
You were with us for what, 12 years?
12 years. So I have to ask this question. When I got into the company, because your opinion has mattered to me my entire life, what did you think when I got in?
I just remember you being fabulous. That's all. It was nice. It was very nice to have someone as enthusiastic as you were, because you were totally enthusiastic about just throwing yourself into everything, just really 2000%. And if anything I had to do, I had to like go, you can bring it back a little bit, bring it just a little bit, you know, because you were so 2000% all the time, right? And then as you matured, you started making choices. But yeah, you were fabulous. You were fabulous. I was so disappointed when you left.
Oh,
you were fabulous.
I was sad when I left. I missed it, but I felt like I was still young enough to do other things.
You know, I'm glad you had that experience, and then you were able to, you know, do the hookup, because you did what? What did she see you do? Miss Winfrey?
Oh,
what did she see you do?
You saw me do Cry.
Hello, exactly. You know, so I'm glad that was a through line, you know, for them, because you've always been an independent voice, you know, which is what I require from everybody, to be that, please. And so that you ended up with your own dance center does not surprise me. You know, it's kind of like, oh, yeah, you know, but that you ended up with this is not like, oh my God, look what, yeah, of course. Or that you ended up spending all that time at her school, at Oprah's school. Or that you ended up in charge of those young women.
None of it.
Course. But it's like, of course. I mean, what else? For me, it's like, what my expectations on everyone is up here. And I always talk about horizons, new horizons. And when you get to the plateau, you know them speeches I used to make about.
Yeah, you were so hard on me. Did you know that? You were really hard on me. I loved it. And
I hope so.
Happy. My mother used to say, Judith Jamison, I think y'all mother and daughter would mistake me for your daughter. And I'm like, no. But in my head, I was like, I wish I was sometimes. But I loved my mom, but I was like, I have these two mothers. I have this one in my personal life, hard on me. Then I have this one, my professional life, extremely hard.
Do you know how much you were carrying with this? You have any idea? Okay, need I say more?
No. So wait.
That's why I was hard on you. If I was hard on you, don't forget, I had an aunt sit in an audience while I was dancing on stage doing something. My aunt was very proud of me, my mother's sister, and she would come up to see me dance at City Center. And I don't know if it was Cry or what, I'm not sure what it was I was doing, but there was someone that was not a person of color sitting behind her. And she heard this woman say behind her, oh, she's good. It's the same. She's so dark.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. You know, and so that has always stuck with me for forever. You know, that all that does is that says to me, watch me.
Yeah.
Just watch me, you know? So if I was hard on you, that's part of what that was about. You had, to this day, and it's sad to say that because of that, that gives you some incentive. The incentive is to be the great artist that you are, regardless. But when you are carrying a history that's been twisted so much, and people trying to get your nose out of joint about your own blood memories, then that's incentive to me to go, oh yeah? Well, look what I remember. So I was on top of you to get you to remember. And I was on top of everyone else in the company to get them to remember whatever they needed to remember, period.
So what was it like walking away, leaving Ailey?
I was going to dance on Broadway with Gregory Hines, as fine as he was. Oh, are you kidding? No, Alan was mad at me, but for a minute, but not forever, because he loved me and I loved him. So, but it wasn't like walking away. It was time for me to go, and my body was going like, oh, I'm not, ouch. I broke the ball of my femur. It was, and I didn't know it was broken. There were things that were saying to me physically, go there. It's time for you to, do this. Change it up. It's not going to be easier, but it's time for a little, revamp. I got revamped, all right. That was one of the hardest things I ever did, is doing a show. If you lapse into thinking you're doing the same thing every night, forget about it. That's when you hurt yourself.
Yes, the same thing every night has never appealed to me.
Until you try it. If you try it, you might find it more interesting than you think it's going to be. Because I did. I mean, I was with, Phyllis Hyman and Gregory Hines and, a whole bunch of wonderful Mercedes Ellington. It was quite a revelation.
You had your own company for a second, and then you decided, not decided, Alvin Ailey invited you, asked you to take over the Ailey company. What was that like, walking away from your own baby that you created and going into his company?
Well, it wasn't walking away. I remember I brought people with me.
Yes,
but I had to take some people out, which was not, that was the hard part, is, that was very difficult. That part of it was very difficult. If someone you love is dying and they said, would you do this? Would you say no? And we were in Kansas City. I was actually with him on tour. We all knew he was ill. And, it wasn't even a question of whether I would drop my company. I did have to talk to I had 12 dancers back then, because they were hurt. They were really hurt, and I understood that. It was hard. That was difficult, because that was just a kernel. The Jamison Project was a kernel of what Ms. Ailey had taught me already, about stepping off that precipice and, going someplace. And we were going in the Jamison Project in a place that was not imitating, you know what I mean? I was trying to add dances to the repertory that wouldn't necessarily be in anybody's something. It was certainly not in Ailey's, because you got a smaller group, So I was experimenting with a lot of things. And
so my last question is, you have been the artistic director of Ailey, artistic director, founder of your own company. You have all of this experience and history and knowledge. What do you say to women like me who have been mentored by you their entire lives and who are artists and choreographers and trying to go out there in the world and build a legacy? What do you say?
What do I say? What are you waiting for? It's like, what are you waiting for? I mean, we're going through this pandemic and the world upside down at the moment. And I asked you, what are you waiting for? All this should be churning. It doesn't shut off. because the way of the world. This is still be churning for your idea of what you want to do, and how brave you are at stepping out, and how you understand what failure is, you know. But you got to take that leap, you know what I mean? If we as a people do it constantly, we're always leaping, because people are always borrowing our stuff and claiming it. So we're always, are you back there borrowing? We already thought of something new, you know? So that's the whole idea to me, is that you have to keep, there's so much in you that has not been touched. And I don't mean little mundane things that you can think of that everybody's thinking about, because with this social media, everybody think they got something new. I got news for you. No, you don't. There ain't nothing new under the sun. It's how you put it together that makes it look like it hasn't been seen before. But we are creative people. We are so creative.
Yeah.
And people are afraid of that. So let's snatch this and then call it our own, you know. I have a last thing I need to say is I just sent the Nicholas Brothers tape to a couple of people, because it gives me joy to watch it. Cab Calloway and them doing all that jumping and
Yes.
oh my, and I look at it and I go, there were people, very famous people there, whole bunch of folks that were up there, and you never saw them except in certain films. And then when you get a chance to see them on a Facebook or whatever media you see them on, and you look at that, it's like a breath of fresh air. It reminds you, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
You know, what are you doing here? You don't know whether, you know, it'll 50 years, 60, 70 years, people will still be looking at it or care about it, whatever. But you look at that and you go like, oh, you know, that came out of us, you know, that came out of their history of saying, here's your bloodline, watch. Here's your blood memory, watch and learn. And then go create something else, as fabulous as that was. And they were humble. They were two humble guys. They weren't going to, is it wonderful what we do? Da, da, da. They just sat in their glory. You know, they sat in it. It was theirs. That's theirs. It belongs to them. And nobody can do it. Nobody. And their next generation was informed, correct? Because it turned out a Gregory Hines. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And a Savion Glover. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. So I think you constantly have to go to, when all this is churning, you have to go to your memory of whatever it is. You have to go to that memory. And if you don't know that memory, then read something that'll help you stimulate it, you know? Yeah. You live where you're living. You know the history of where you're living. And as Dr. Henry Clark says, know your civilization. First part of civilization is being civil toward one another, yeah. Right? Yeah. So you got to know what that civilization was and what you're the product of through all continents, was starting on that original continent. Then you churn those, you keep churning it and keep churning and try and experiment and fail and get up again and da-da-da-da-da, you know? That's how it all is. Am I right or am I right?
You're right. Yes, you're right.
Yeah. I'm so proud of you.
Oh, thank you so
much. If I can be, I know your mom is, but I can be too. So I'm claiming you.
To me. I'm so thankful for you being in my life, for you living the life that you have lived, so I'm able to live the life I'm living. I'm so proud to have been taught by you and to still be in your heart. It makes me feel really important that I can still call you and talk to you.
Oh, yeah.
I thank you for everything, Judy. I can't even imagine. You have no idea how I've just kept you on this pedestal and you're still there. You are
phenomenal. Thank you.
You are
phenomenal.
You.
Ashe, ashe.
And I love you so much. I love you. Thank you for doing this. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Wish I could give you a big hug. Oh.